However, widespread power disconnections, of course, due to non-payment, have raised this question. Is there a duty on government in particular to provide free basic electricity to the people of South Africa, especially the poor? That is the question we're asking tonight. Here to help me unpack this, I'm joined by Dr. Tracy Ledger, a senior researcher at the Public Affairs Research Institute, energy expert Chris Yelland, Eskom spokesperson Sikonathi Mantshantsha, and Masego Kodisang, who's the national campaigner for the Forum for Service Delivery. To be a part of this conversation tonight, WhatsApp your questions and comments to 072-110-5584, or you can tweet us tonight at Newzroom 405. Good evening to you all, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight on In Focus. Dr. Tracy, I'll start with you. I know this is the outcome, but that's where I'll start, and then we'll get back to the causal link and unpack this a little bit further. But as an opening question, 38.3 billion disbursed by Treasury for free basic electricity to indigent household goes missing or is misused by municipalities. Is this deliberate on the part of the municipalities? Should this be blamed on corruption? Is this incompetence? Is this failure of oversight, or a deliberate sabotage of the poor?
Good evening. Look, I mean, it really isn't that straightforward. So what we have is in the national budget, there are subsidies for poor households to receive a complete package of basic services: electricity, water, sanitation, and waste removal. But the detail is in how this policy is actually implemented. So every year, National Treasury calculates how many indigent households it's going to support with this package of services. At the moment, it's about 10 million households. And then it calculates how many of the qualifying households are in each municipality and transfers the money for that. But the way the law stands at the moment is that a household can only actually access the free basic services if they are registered as indigent by their municipalities. There's no national standard for what qualifies you to be an indigent household. It is entirely at the discretion of the municipality. If the municipality doesn't register you, then you can't get the free basic services. Now, the transfer to municipalities is a discretionary transfer. It's not a conditional grant. There's no law that says that the municipalities have to use the money to subsidize the free basic services. That's the one thing. The second thing is that what is happening is that households are not being registered as indigent. So we've only got about 2 million registered indigent households in South Africa, which is obviously a gross understatement of the situation. There are 4.5 million households who live below the food poverty line. Yeah. There are more than 8.5 million households who live below the upper bound poverty line. So the problem is with the registration of indigent households in municipalities. It's become very bureaucratic, and it's become very difficult for municipalities to comply. The final point to make is that is a global picture. There are many municipalities that are in fact delivering all the free basic services to the households for which they get an allowance. There are some municipalities that are providing hardly any. And this is extremely problematic, because what it means is that your ability to access free basic services, which is a rather imperfect contribution to reducing the cost of living, depends enormously on where you live. And that is entrenching then inequality. So the problem is much more complicated. And the last thing I'll say on that is that the free basic services actually only provide a small amount of services to households. It's much less than what households need. Yeah. So on the electricity, it's only 50 kilowatt hours per month. An average household needs at least 200 free kilowatt hours a month, and that's for basic things that they need to do in the household. So what is actually impacting households more than not getting the free basic electricity is the fact that municipal accounts are essentially unaffordable for all poor households. Yes. They cannot afford to pay. The average household municipal account for the poorest households in South Africa is between 800 and 1,000 rand a month, which is completely unaffordable for households that can't afford to buy enough food. So it is part of a much bigger problem.
And that's where we bring Sikonathi Mantshantsha. And that's the question for you, Sikonathi Mantshantsha. If you look at the widespread disconnection in particularly poor areas due to non-payment in the context of affordable access for all, what does Eskom say about it? What does that tell you about the affordability of electricity?
The first thing to add to Tracy's point, of the 2 million registered indigent customers, only about 900,000 actually collect the electricity that is available to them, and that is free. So as she explained accurately, that they have to register with the municipalities and they collect their token per month. Only 900,000 actually collect it. So there is a lot of people that should be getting free basic electricity that are not getting it, either because they do not know or because they just don't bother to bring the token with. Because when you come to buy electricity from Eskom, you get topped up with your free allocation from the municipality. Now, your question about the cost of electricity. Indeed, it is true that we have seen a significant increase in the price of electricity over the past 10 years. That is in the South African context, and that, of course, becomes even worse if you look at the fact that the economy as a whole is losing jobs, and so that's our reality. However, all of this is still not sufficient to get Eskom. The current electricity tariff is not what it should be. Eskom should be charging. We rely this on the National Energy Regulator, which, of course, after an extensive process where Eskom has to apply for prudently incurred costs, then the regulator does decide. Even if Eskom were to apply for a 20% increase in the price of electricity, we still would be below the third of the average countries the price of electricity. So yes, indeed, there is quite a lot that can be done by both Eskom and the municipalities to encourage people to receive their free basic electricity. And from the side of Eskom, we have engaged in campaigns to give an awareness to people that they should approach their municipalities and come and claim their free basic electricity.
Is there no duty on Eskom to ensure that all households in South Africa have access to sufficient quantities of affordable, clean and safe energy?
As Tracy has so clearly explained, all electricity that must be produced has to be paid for. And the National Treasury the government has made money available for indigent households through the municipalities. Yes. So what Eskom does is to encourage people to approach their municipalities and apply for this. It is, as she stated earlier, the discretion of the municipalities whether they accept such a household as an indigent and qualifying household. In the event that the municipality does, then they get a token and an account number from the municipality to come and collect their free basic electricity. Eskom implements this program of the government. It is not Eskom that makes this decision as to who qualifies for free electricity.
Certainly, and that's one of the drivers of this particular dilemma we are facing. Chris Yelland, Dr. Tracy mentions that at least 800 rands is paid by these households, yet we have come to a figure of 435 per indigent household per month on free electricity. How did we come to that figure? That's a question we'll tackle when we come next here on In Focus. Back tonight on In Focus, Newzroom Afrika, channel 405. Do households in South Africa have a right to free basic electricity, that is universal free basic electricity access? And what if it's unaffordable? What if 80% of society currently can't even afford the basic basket of nutritious food? Does that mean all those households are eligible for free electricity? We'll talk to those questions tonight. Chris Yelland, before the break, I mentioned this figure of 435 rands, 4 cents per indigent household per month. How do we come to that figure?
Well, this is a figure that National Treasury work out based on a basket of different free basic services, of which electricity or energy is one of those that form part of the basket. And a certain amount of electricity, 50 kilowatt hours, is allocated as free basic electricity, and there's a price to that which municipalities and Eskom charge, and it works out to roughly 100 rand a month, if I'm correct. The total basket of free basic services amounts to 430 rand or so a month, approximately that figure, of which, as I say, electricity works out at 100 rand. And National Treasury works this out. They work out how many indigent households there are, and they give the money to the municipalities based on the number of indigent households per municipality. And that money is supposed to go for free basic electricity, but it doesn't. The vast majority of that money is misappropriated by the municipality and used for a purpose for which it was never intended. And I know Tracy says this is a complicated matter, but I try and keep it real simple. The person who gives the money for a specific purpose, it is their duty and responsibility to South Africa to make sure it is used for that purpose. And if it's not used for that purpose, they should get the money back so that it can be used by National Treasury for other government policies or other government initiatives
otherwise
which it can be delivered.
Or otherwise it is stolen, right? Let's make this clear. This is not money that municipalities are expected to pay. So it's not coming out of their revenue. This is money that Treasury allocates for the disbursement for this particular purpose.
From the taxpayer. Not from government. From the taxpayer. Treasury just disperses this money on behalf of the taxpayer to municipalities for distribution to the indigent households. And the money is misappropriated and not used for the purpose for which it was intended.
What's the conflict here? I mean, as far as energy access, which should be prioritized, and of course, the municipal financial situation.
Yeah, look, I just want to try and keep this real simple. There's a certain organization called National Treasury, which, in my view, is not exercising its duty to ensure that the money is used for the purpose intended. It knows that the money is not being used for the purpose intended. It has a duty to do this. Municipalities are also to blame. Tracy is right. Some municipalities do their job, but some don't. And in fact, the average over the whole lot is a very low disbursement of this money. The other thing about free basic electricity, as I think Sikonathi pointed out, many of these indigent households are not even connected to the grid. So although there may be a free basic electricity allocation, they cannot claim it. And not only can they not claim it because they're not connected, they cannot claim it because it is so difficult to register with your municipality as being indigent. There are so many barriers. They don't want to give this money to the indigent. They want to use it for other purpose for which it was not intended. So they make it very difficult, almost impossible for the indigent household to register as being indigent.
Masego, is that the truth? Why are families failing to register for this particular support from government? Why only 2 million out of 10.1 million people are claiming this money that's supposed to support them?
Thank you to you, Thabo, and thank you to the viewers. Yes, people are failing to claim this money simply because of the systems. Our systems in the municipalities are not allowing people to have a transparent service delivery, which is meted at ensuring that people get what is rightfully theirs. That is why, as the Forum for Service Delivery, as a community-based movement which champions service delivery and which advocates for rights of our people, we are here today to say that amongst the basic human rights of our people is water. And we are saying equally so, electricity must be at the apex of being afforded the status of being a basic human right, as it's enshrined in our Chapter 2 of the Constitution to say. Those are the elements which can afford our people dignity, equality, fairness, and be protected from suffering. So we are, as the Forum for Service Delivery today, saying people must be given free electricity. We are having an average of saying each household can afford to get 1,000 kilowatts of electricity if money is spent the way it should by our municipality, by the government, by our SOEs.
What do you say when Sikonathi Mantshantsha says electricity is produced in order for it to be paid for? So somebody must pay for it at some point. That's the whole point of producing this electricity.
You see, as an organization which is fighting corruption, we cannot agree that the people cannot be taken care of from the taxes of the people of South Africa. Because if they are not taken care of through the basic human rights issues, now that money is going for corruption. We've seen that with the Zondo Commission. We have seen that with the PPE saga. And also, a lot of money is taken by our municipalities simply because they are not directed where they're supposed to be directed.
Tracy, many organizations would like to link this right to access to housing to say, well, that also would link a right to provision of free electricity. Is it as simple as that?
Well, I think it is as simple as that, because when we have a look at the white paper on energy and the white paper on local government, it's quite clear that the state had the intention that there would be universal, affordable access to services. Now, affordable doesn't mean that you have to starve your children to pay your municipal account. That's not affordable. Okay? And if you have a look at the food security situation in South Africa, it means that at least half of South African households shouldn't be paying anything for free basic services. And certainly not the 4.3 million households who already don't have enough food to eat. So the thing is we started with this assumption that we would have universal, affordable access to free services, electricity, water, and sanitation. And there were two reasons for that. The first thing is that those things are absolutely critical to raising people's standards of living, which is reducing poverty and reducing inequality. Okay? Access to electricity is associated with better health outcomes, better education outcomes, ditto with water. The other thing is that it's critical for people's ability to earn a livelihood. If you don't have access to a reliable and affordable source of electricity and water, all sorts of small-scale industries, from agro-processing to small home-based businesses, are completely out of your reach. So affordable access to basic services was absolutely critical to the realization of a socially and economically transformed South Africa. And what has happened over the last 25 years is that for various reasons, we have forgotten about that. And we have transformed millions of poor households from citizens with rights into customers who must be disconnected if they don't get paid. Yeah. And I completely agree with Masego. People talk about this idea of cost recovery, but you can't talk about cost recovery if you have absolutely no control over the costs. Because what you're saying in cost recovery is that a municipality can spend as much money as it likes on whatever it likes, and the households that live there must pay in. That you can have as much corruption as you like at Eskom, and you can have wasteful contracts and that, and consumers must just pay for it. And that's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. We need to start from the other side and say, this is what households can reliably afford to pay. Now, that 435 Rand package of basic services might, to many people who are watching this, not look like a lot of money. But let me tell you, 1 in 4 children in this country is so food insecure that they are stunted. 400 Rand a month will make a critical difference to food security in this country. We cannot keep acting as if households must simply pay, as if they can manufacture money out of somewhere. What kind of state have we got that expects people to starve their children to pay for services because that's the way it's supposed to be? It's complete and utter nonsense.
What are the cost drivers, Chris Yelland? There is a debate around whether or not it is our generation system that is the cost driver. Dr. Tracy would argue it's probably the distribution system that is the cost driver. Where are you sitting on this? And Sikonathi will get you to respond.
Now look, there's a number of costs that make up the final price to the end user. The primary energy, largely at the moment, coal, is a significant cost. The actual generation business, the transmission business, the distribution business, all of which make up the final price of electricity. And you know, getting to Tracy's point, there is an intention by government that there should be free basic services, and one can argue that it is kind of implied in the Constitution, water, sanitation, electricity, these kind of services, and government is the elected government, and it has the right to decide as a policy that there should be such free basic services to certain classes of people that should be cross-subsidized through the fiscus. And I don't think it is Eskom's job to provide free electricity. No, Eskom has certain costs to produce electricity, and there are costs to distribute energy, and Eskom has to recover those costs in order to remain a viable entity that can continue its job. But government has the right to use taxpayers' money for certain free basic services. It has that policy. It does it. The problem is not writing it into the law. The problem is not writing it into the Constitution. You can put it on a piece of paper. That's easy. The problem is that it's not being done. The problem is that Treasury is actually allocating the money, calculating it, allocating it, giving it to the municipalities, but the municipalities are not using it for the purpose intended. There's a whole lot of bureaucracy and barriers to prevent people from claiming what government policy says should be the people's. So I see the problem as twofold. Municipalities are not doing their job, and the Treasury is not doing its job and holding them accountable and making sure that the money that was given for this purpose is used for the purpose it was intended for. And that is the problem I see.
We'll continue in a moment with our panel tonight. Sikonathi Mantshantsha, Chris Yelland, Dr. Tracy Ledger, as well as Masego Kodisang. In conversation tonight with Dr. Tracy Ledger, Chris Yelland, Sikonathi Mantshantsha, and Masego Kodisang, and you, of course, coming through tonight with your questions. Before the break, Dr. Tracy was asking that question, is it generation that is the cost driver, or is distribution? In your research, you say, why are we failing to address the energy distribution problem in our conversation on just transition? You're saying the current structure, the distribution structure system, actively undermines the poverty and inequality reduction goals. What's wrong in the distribution system?
Well, I mean, I think sorry, you want to ask me?
Dr. Tracy, Dr. Tracy, you can go for it.
So, I mean, look, I mean, I think it comes down to the basic fundamental underpinnings of distribution of electricity by local municipalities. And that is that this is supposed to be the main source of income for municipalities. But at the same time, we're supposed to have affordable universal access to services. And the 1998 white paper didn't see a conflict between those two goals, but it's quite clear there is a conflict. You can't have it both ways. And in fact, we're not having it either way, because households can't afford to pay for the electricity, so there's no universal affordable access. And because people are not paying, can't afford to pay their municipal accounts, there's now not sufficient revenue collection. So, you know, for me, the best solution would be to start with basic principles. We need affordable access. So what kind of distribution system is going to deliver that? Because it's pretty clear that the current system is not doing it, not even close. And so unless there's a commitment to enforce the way in which the current system is supposed to be working, which Chris says that municipalities in fact are obliged to deliver that electricity and all the other free basic services, because the situation with water is even worse, to households, then nothing's going to change. So either there must be enforcement in the system, or there must be a better system, one that actually delivers to poor households. But we can't have a system where we pretend we've got all these benefits for poor households and actually we don't, and everybody just carries on as if it's fine.
So, Sikonathi, it's a 50-50 kind of responsibility, isn't it, between Eskom and municipalities as far as the distribution of electricity? Tell me if I'm wrong. But is there a better way, a better distribution system that will ensure that the poor get affordable access?
Absolutely, Thabo. The first thing I must point out that you should have had the government sitting on my chair here to answer the question, why are people not getting the electricity that the government has already decided they should be getting? Now, when it comes to Eskom, as you probably know now, again, we have the cheapest connection in order to get the infrastructure to every household. Not the whole country is yet covered in terms of accessibility, and Eskom is working on the remaining 13% of the country to make sure that everyone has a connection to the power grid. And of course, there are microgrids that are being piloted and to be used in the poorer areas of the country. The issue, though, is not whether you do have the infrastructure once that has happened. The issue is, do the people sitting in those households know that they have free basic electricity that is available to them? Are they being encouraged by their representatives in the local government levels, by the government as a whole, to go and claim their free allocation? We have not seen much of that happening. And the citizens themselves indeed have a duty to hold their government accountable and demand access to the electricity that they have been promised. And Eskom is not in a position to answer the question as to how much electricity is sufficient to power a household. The government, which I again, Thabo, repeat, you should have had sitting in my position, should answer the question, are we doing enough to deliver the electricity?
But the thing with Eskom is that when you institute load reduction, you, I would say bypass government, you don't really, but their buildings remain on and you go directly to the residents and their power is cut off.
Thabo, Eskom's job, as given by the government, as mandated through the law, is to generate, transmit and distribute electricity that must be paid for by the end user. That is the policy that Eskom implements as mandated by the government. The load reduction that you are referring to, its customers actually, in most cases, stealing electricity through illegal connections. It's residents in those areas stealing the electricity, which then causes, it damages the infrastructure, which unfortunately has to inconvenience even the paying customers in those areas. So Eskom implements the measure and switches off the power when the most damage occurs. And we indeed request and have to urge the paying customers, the loyal customers, to tolerate the loss of power for 3 to 4 hours during the period when their neighbors are stealing the electricity. So you can't go to the government and say, where we are distributing electricity, can we switch them off? You switch off in order to protect, one, Eskom's infrastructure, to protect the paying customers, to protect the property of the communities there from the illegal connections and the explosions that occur there. And that is a totally different issue to whether or not people are getting their free electricity.
Now, Masego, the people are stealing electricity, which in a sense inconveniences the paying customers. How do you respond to that?
Thank you. The people indeed are stealing electricity. There are illegals going on. You know, it's because we've got poor and rural provinces in South Africa where people are unemployed. We can't hide away from that. As an organization which is standing for people, the poorest of the poor, we are here today to say we are representing the rurals because most of our constituencies are in the rural setup of our country. Most of our people are unemployed. So it's not surprising that we are having illegals going on. Hence today we are saying, let it be a policy or let it be a law that people are getting free electricity. Let us lead our people. The leadership that is there, let them govern this country.
Yeah.
And they must be able to point where problems are and work on them, correct them.
Yeah.
We can't just always, like, we are on the 4th industrial revolution as we speak, where now we are supposed to elevate the lives of our people, put them in a certain level. We can't have a province where free Wi-Fi is given and other provinces there's no electricity, absolutely no electricity. So we must have equal service delivery that is given to our people. That's where we are coming from as the Forum for Service Delivery, that things need to change. And change is now in our country. Like now, we are talking renewable energy. Renewable energy is saying that you must have alternative energy methods, like your solar, like your energy saving devices that you are giving to your people. So things must change. We have to move as a country and match the times that we are living in. Thank you.
Dr. Tracy, agreeing with you there, I suppose if it is law that electricity is free, Sikonathi Mantshantsha and Eskom won't have a situation where people are stealing electricity. In fact, it would, I suppose, assist in a sense as far as that is concerned. However, Chris Yelland says municipalities should be held accountable. National Treasury should be held accountable. You take it a little bit further. You're saying DMR should be held accountable. NERSA should be held accountable. SALGA should be held accountable. All these organizations that are supposed to ensure that affordable access is actually happening on the ground. Why?
Well, I mean, that's what always happens. When lots of people are accountable for something, essentially no one's accountable for anything. So, you know, DMRE will say, well, they own the free basic electricity policy, but they don't exercise oversight over local government. That's COGTA. The Department of Water and Sanitation owns the free water and sanitation policy, but then it's COGTA. Then Treasury. So you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't help to argue about who is accountable and who isn't accountable. But I think that this is an important issue about the illegal connections, because this is the bottom line. If people could afford the electricity, there wouldn't be the illegal connections, which incur a great deal of costs for the system. If, you know, when I tell people in other countries that people who live in houses in South Africa that have got electricity connections are burning coal in their houses because they can't afford the electricity, I mean, they actually think I'm talking nonsense. They can't believe it. They just find this the most astonishing situation, that people have got an electricity connection, but because it's so expensive, they're burning coal and paraffin and wood in their houses, especially for things like cooking. So we have all sorts of other externalities that are caused by the fact that electricity is unaffordable. We have the problem of illegal connections. 1,500 children die every year in this country because of indoor air pollution. Households don't have enough money to spend on basic food because they're paying for electricity. And I know that the move is very much to say we must have more prepaid meters, but prepaid meters are essentially taking household income away from other things. We have all of the externalities created by childhood malnutrition, household food insecurity, all of which could be addressed in large part if we had access to affordable electricity. And the point is that the current system is not working. Nobody in the system who's supposed to be accountable is accountable. Everybody says, well, it's either kind of not their job, or, well, you know, we don't have that kind of authority over municipalities. The municipalities themselves, there's a wide range of situations, and the bottom line is that we are not delivering free basic services to households. So someone has got to be responsible for this, because it's ridiculous. We can't say every year in the budget we're supporting so many households for free basic services when we're doing nothing of the sort.
Quickly, before we go to break, municipal tariff structures and the relationship between municipalities and Eskom, how does that work, and how does that contribute to unaffordable access?
Yeah. Are you calling, if I may come in here, look, tariff setting is done by municipalities and approved by NERSA. So municipalities have to calculate their tariffs, submit them to NERSA, who scrutinize them, and finally approve them. You know, you also mentioned, you know, all these different organizations, SALGA, DMRE, NERSA, COGTA, Treasury, you know, all municipalities, etc., etc. And I agree, they all play some kind of a role. But at the end of it all, constitutionally, it is municipalities who are the local government who are responsible for delivering the service locally, and the Constitution is absolutely clear that local government, municipalities are responsible for electricity reticulation. They can outsource this, they can give some of it to Eskom, but ultimately it's a local government responsibility, They are getting the money from Treasury. They are getting the money. And it is their responsibility to deliver the service. The problem is they're unable to deliver the services for which they are mandated to do. That is a fundamental problem. They don't have necessarily the capacity, the staffing, the skills necessary to disperse this money properly. I don't think it is theft. It's not being stolen. It's just not being used for the purpose for which it was intended, being misappropriated. Yes, maybe there is some leakage here and leakage there, theft may be taking place, but at the end of the day, Treasury has got to exercise oversight on the money that it gives to municipalities in order to do a particular function. And if they can't do that function, then Treasury must take the money back and give it to somebody who can do the function. Or we need to sit down at a table and work out how are we going to get this to the people. Because that is what it was intended. There are rules, there are policies in place for all of this, but it's not happening because the people on the ground are not able or not willing to do it.
We have clear policy in place on universal access. What went wrong is what we're trying to get to the bottom of tonight. Dr. Tracy Ledger, Chris Yelland, Sikonathi Mantshantsha, and Masego Kodisang. Welcome back. You're live with us tonight. Dr. Tracy Ledger, Chris Yelland, Sikonathi Mantshantsha, and Masego Kodisang. We're talking, of course, access to energy, affordable access to clean, safe energy. And of course, some of the challenges in making sure that this happens. The policy is in place. What has gone wrong? Some of the issues being highlighted here: poor systems of governance, failure to allocate who will be held accountable for the delivery of affordable access, and of course the haphazard institutional alignment. We're talking here the failure to identify some of the critical competing trade-offs that we have taken in policy direction, and that's what we're going to talk about, as well as taking some of your questions tonight. Let's take this one for Sikonathi from Tsepo in Johannesburg. Does Eskom do meter auditing? Why does it compel customers to use a minimum of 350 in urban areas and 100 rands in rural areas for a period of a month? Is that true, Sikonathi?
There is indeed a minimum amount of electricity that ideally customers should be buying in order for Eskom to be able to fully service their accounts. So yes, we do meter audits where we have found instances of illegal connections, where you have had these transformers exploding as a result of the overloading, which is the theft that I spoke to earlier. We have to go through this in order to be able to replace the transformers and continue to supply the consumers with electricity.
So what's the rationale of a 350 in urban areas and 100 in rural areas?
The reality is that you need the revenue to be able to produce and distribute the electricity to where it is needed. Tracy was talking earlier about whether South Africa should just make this free and electricity and available to everybody. From Eskom's perspective, you have to pay at least 140 billion rand per annum in order to produce electricity. I'm talking the biggest cost there goes to primary energy, which is coal, at about 100 billion rand per month. And there are other services that Eskom still has to contract for that come to about 40 billion rand. That would be the cost of producing electricity as things stand. And if a decision by South Africa has to be made that free basic electricity or electricity is available free to everybody, the government, of course, has to make that decision. And it also has to make a decision about how you pay for all of these inputs. Where do you get, who pays the 140 billion rand to go buy coal, to go buy and maintain power stations and ensure that the infrastructure is able to deliver the electricity to where it is required? So that's a question for the people of South Africa.
Yeah.
And we spoke earlier about local government and the inability to actually deliver the services. In addition to the municipalities not being able to properly deliver the free basic electricity, they're also not. Many of them are not paying Eskom for the electricity that has been consumed by mostly paying customers who pay over the monies to the municipalities, but the money does not reach Eskom. We have today outstanding debt of 35.9 billion rand or in municipal debt. And let's be frank again, which has been part of which has been written down by Eskom due to the inability to be collected. So there is a whole lot of decisions that have to be made, and the citizens themselves have a role here to play and hold their representatives accountable.
I suppose to Tracy's point, if they can't afford to pay electricity, why do they believe that the poor households in South Africa can afford to pay electricity? South Africa is not a socialist state. This is from VJ in KwaZulu-Natal. Our small tax base cannot support this. You can only milk a cow until it dries up. Water is a basic human right, not electricity. Anything that is free will naturally be abused. Dr. Tracy, I think that's for you there. 140 billion rand, says Sikonathi, to produce electricity. Can our small tax base afford that?
You know, it's all about costs and benefits, and it's a little short-sighted to just look at the cost. You know, if subsidized electricity meant that households had more money to spend on food, let's not forget that non-communicable diseases caused by malnutrition cost this public health service sector about 30 billion rand a year. Let's not forget that children that are nutritionally compromised can't learn in school and are much more likely to have lifestyle diseases later in life. Let's not forget that nutritionally compromised children are much more likely to grow up into violent adults with all sorts of socio-economic consequences. Let's not forget that our ability to actually grow that tax base, we know we've got a small tax base, what we want is a bigger tax base with more small businesses and more people earning a living. We can't do that if households do not have access to any kind of electricity, energy, and basic water. People say all around the world, you see all these small-scale manufacturing businesses. Well, you can't set up a small-scale manufacturing business in a township in South Africa because you can't get access to electricity that you can afford or that's reliable. In the rural areas, it's impossible for poor households to take advantage of opportunities in agro-processing because of access to electricity and water. So I think it's very short-sighted to just look at this and understand that energy is not just a consumable, it's an enabler of economic activity, and it's an enabler of reducing all sorts of other socio-economic development ills. And I think the thing that strikes me is that everybody sitting here, all four of us, all agree that the system is a complete and utter mess, okay? It doesn't work properly. It's not delivering what it's supposed to be. The problem is, how do we make anybody that can do anything about it realize that something needs to be done about this? I mean, to Nkosanati's point, I mean, this idea that we need a certain amount of money to run Eskom, well, that's fine, but why are we forcing people to starve their children to pay for that? I mean, everybody agrees that the system, well, all of us agree that the system isn't working. How long is it going to take before everybody else wakes up and realizes that the system isn't working?
This idea that the integrated energy plan is the thing to go to and it will help us. I mean, you speak to municipalities, they'll tell you, we have these IEPs and they tell us exactly how the amount of electricity is needed. Does that vehicle work?
No, of course not, because nobody has ever addressed their minds to the problem of affordable access. Even though the white paper on local government talks about affordable access to services, not one single piece of government policy or regulation has ever defined what does it mean for a service to be affordable. Okay? And in fact, the white paper says that national government has got a responsibility to intervene in a local municipality that will not or is unable to provide affordable access to services. But none of them ever have because we've got no benchmark for affordable. So how do we deliver this goal when we've got absolutely no way of assessing what it means?
Masego, here's a WhatsApp message for you from our viewers. It says, South Africans, you are spoiled. They want everything for free. There are 100 units free. They want free houses, free water, now free electricity. No, people, man. That is Ntabi saying in Pretoria. Masego, what do you say to Ntabi saying?
Thank you, Ntabi saying. You see here, we are demanding a policy on basic human rights. We are speaking here about a fundamental right. You see, electricity affects our life as far as the livelihood as it is, your health, your education, your everyday living. You can't do without electricity. So We can't, expect people to go and fetch wood. The people now are, informal settlers are putting the development, as housing development, it's occupying every little space that is there for people to go and fetch wood. We can't even expect people to buy paraffin because it's endangering the lives of people who are staying in shacks and stuff like that. They're burning and all those things. So we are saying, let us have equality and fair service delivery offering to all our people, because we are in a certain level of fourth industrial revolution wherein we expect a better life, and it should be a better life for all. As a champion of service delivery, as the Forum for Service Delivery, we are saying the basic human rights of electricity, it's one of the cornerstone of ensuring that people are offered what is duly theirs, what they have voted for. Thank you.
We appreciate you all for coming. Chris, Dr. Tracy, Sikonathi, and thanks to Masego for staying on, and thank you for your engagement tonight on WhatsApp as well as on Twitter tonight.